Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss the conclusions I've drawn from studying American history. Conclusions you might not agree with, but that's all right, as long as you have your own conclusions that you've drawn from studying American history. So, we're going to talk today about Calvin Coolidge's administration and some interesting things that happened during that time. So, he served as 30th president between 1923 and 1929 after having been Harding's vice president. Excuse me. He had his father, a notary public, administer the oath of office to him when he was awoken by a telegram informing him that President Harding had died in San Francisco. He was the only president to ever take the oath of office from his father. Although he made no changes in Harding's real cabinet of distinguished men and changed few offices, he did eliminate drinking alcohol from the White House and established the motto that, quote, the business of America is business. The Harding scandals rocked the country as they were revealed, but Coolidge remained above them and continued to veto bonuses for veterans. By the 1924 election, he firmly controlled the Republican machinery. His election was clouded by the death of his son, who had gotten blood poisoning from a blister he received playing tennis on the White House lawn. Coolidge was faced with a coalition of powerful progressive liberal Republicans, and Democrats lined up against him. The word progressive today signifies someone who believes that the more perversion you tolerate and accept as normal, the more enlightened you are. But at this time, it was a reference to a type of political reasoning that involved more government involvement to solve society's problems. In spite of this, Coolidge did manage to reduce the national debt. Also, his Secretary of State, Frank B. Kellogg, won the 1929 Nobel Peace Prize for the Kellogg-Briand Pact outlawing war. I'm sure that terrified despots and tyrants, knowing that war was now illegal. Sarcasm. There was an industrial boom in the 1920s, but many of America's farmers were not sharing in it. Coolidge was oblivious to their plight and twice vetoed measures to provide them relief. In 1927, he announced that he would not run for a second full term after having been elected only once. He had been partly responsible for the growing confidence in the stock market, with his optimistic statements that buoyed investors' hopes. It has been said that he pulled out of the 1928 campaign because he foresaw the coming depression. Aviator Charles Lindbergh captured the American imagination in 1927 by flying from New York to France in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. He became an American hero and the idol of many young boys. The next year, Amelia Earhart did the same thing for young women, even beating Lindbergh's time by several hours. In the next decade, she would accomplish many more feats of aviation pioneering, only to mysteriously disappear in the Pacific, never to be heard from again. Lindbergh would go on to be an outspoken isolationist on the eve of World War II, and in some minds, that made him a German collaborator. So next, we'll talk about Hoover, and I thank you for listening and watching. Like I say, if you might even be offended by my conclusions on American history, but that's okay as long as you have your own conclusions that you've drawn from your own studies of American history. I thank you for listening and watching, and I'll talk to you again.